Oh, hello, friends. So good to be here. I am just getting set up. Just give me one moment to do that. There we go. All right, my name is Jen Berkmans, and I help highly sensitive women who struggle with overwhelm and the emotional fatigue that can come with being highly sensitive. And I teach them how to become more connected to their body and stress management techniques to help them feel more calm and grounded in their daily lives. And today I am talking about the topic of why highly sensitive people become overwhelmed so easily. The topic of, or the word overwhelm gets used a lot. And I know in my personal experience as a highly sensitive person, and from what I hear from other highly sensitive people, that overwhelm is something that we experience a lot. And I think until you understand the why, it is very hard to navigate that overwhelm without reaching burnout or just completely disconnecting yourself from the world. And so when you can understand that why, it makes it much easier to navigate that overwhelm and to figure out the tools to kind of work through that. So to start, we'll start with the number one reason why HSPs, or highly sensitive people, become overwhelmed so easily. Now, it comes down to one of the main principles that make up highly sensitive people and make up high sensitivity. So the first one is that we notice the subtle details that other people just won't. So highly sensitive people, or the trait of high sensitivity, is a trait that is believed to be based on survival. And so in the high sensitivity, let me just gather my thoughts here to make it make sense. High sensitivity is believed to be a trait of survivability for the general population. So a small population is highly sensitive in a way to notice things that the other population doesn't, to help keep everyone safe. Okay, and so part of that is that we notice small details and the subtle things that other people don't. So our brains just work in a different way. So one of the parts of that is that our senses tend to be more sensitive in general. So smells, we tend to notice smells that other people don't. Now we can see in survival how that would be important, because noticing other smells, foods, gases, other things that could be potentially harmful, if we are noticing those, that can help save the population. Now, obviously, in day-to-day things, that can make things kind of overwhelming, right? So if we're noticing and taking in smells, noises, and sights, so how that can show up is like perfumes, smelly environments, like being in a downtown area that's kind of smelly, that can add to overwhelm because you're taking in the smells. Then you're also taking in the noises. So busy environments, honking of horns, concerts, malls, busy places. So you're taking in the noises, the smells, and then lights and signs and all of these things. So if we're noticing all of these details, and our sensors are more sensitive, we're taking all of that in, as well as the other things that we're taking in. So you can see how that could add to overwhelm in just a daily experience of things. The second part of that is we tend to notice the subtleties that hide behind just everyday things. So an example is in people. We notice nonverbal cues and moods and whether that person is trustworthy. And how we do that is we take these small little details, we don't know that we're doing this, that we've related to past experiences, and made these connections. So when someone does this, they're likely to do this. And so in general, highly sensitive people tend to have a very good, gut instinct around people and nonverbal cues and how people are feeling, and those kind of things. The other thing I've noticed personally too is like books and movies, being able to pick out the themes, connections, and like predictable. I'm able to predict things that are going to happen because I'm able to notice those subtleties. And this is just an example of how we, as highly sensitive people, our brains take in more information than other people do. Now, what that means is, these subtleties that we're taking in, our senses tend to be more sensitive. We're taking in all of this stuff all of the time. And so what that means in a day experience, if you're, let's say, with a group of people and you're traveling with your family, that means taking in all that new stuff and all of that information that you're taking in, you may become tired easier or quicker than other people. And that may manifest as overwhelm because you're just taking all of this information in, and that other people are just not. So the brain, for everybody, will take in information that it thinks is important and it'll leave the rest. For HSPs, we're taking in more because as a safety feature, we are supposed to notice these subtle things to help protect other people. So in a, traveling experience, you may become tired quicker. You may find that in busy environments like going to clubs, going to malls, that you can only take that every once in a while. You can't do that all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's more to bring that awareness of, hey, my brain works this way. And so I may need to put into place certain things so that I can still do the things that I want with people. But I need to also take care of myself because that's just how my brain works. So the subtleties that we're noticing in our senses, plus added stimulus, means we can reach overwhelm quicker, right? Because all of this stuff's coming in and our senses just become overwhelmed. Our brains become overwhelmed. So it's important to note that if we're already stressed, that overwhelm can just kind of send us over all of that extra stimulus can send us kind of over the edge. And yeah, so that's important to note. The second point is that we process these things to a much deeper level than other people. So studies have been done in highly sensitive people and non-highly sensitive people, so non-sensitive. And the part of the brain, the insula, is the part of the brain that integrates moment-to-moment knowledge of our inner experience and emotions, as well as our body and external experiences. And in the studies, they found that the insula was much more activated in highly sensitive people. So what does that mean? It means that in general, we process our experiences, inner emotions, and outer experience, and our body in relation to other people to a much deeper degree, because that part of the brain is being activated more. So all of the details that I mentioned in the stimulus and the subtleties that we take in are processed to a deeper degree. So when we take in all those details, we may need extra downtime for our brain to be able to process all of that. It's kind of like, the computer that's taking in all this information, and if you're like transferring files and you get that little circle, it needs that time to process. And so our brains need a little bit longer to do that processing. So what it's doing is when it takes in all this information, our brain will make these connections, so to past experiences, to other things we've experienced, and it helps us to be able to relate to things a bit quicker. So we take in this information and our brain compares it to past experiences and similar things that we've experienced, and then it helps us to relate to that information a little bit easier and quicker in the future, so once we've already processed it. This can help us to remember things a little bit easier, because the way a highly sensitive person's brain works is it'll take in an information that it needs to remember. And I know, like personally, I've always been able to do this. I didn't know that this was a highly sensitive trait until I was reading Elaine Aron's book. And what she says is that, so like she explains with a phone number, but like any type of information that you're trying to remember, and the brain will compare, like it makes these different connections to it to make it relatable and remembered easier. So like the number 4, because it's whatever, and because it's my favorite number, and like that kind of thing. So then it makes these different connections and we're able to remember things. I hope that makes sense. So what does all of this mean? Yes, we get to overwhelm easier. Yes, we process things deeper to make those connections, which help us to be able to react to situations and relate to things in the future. And we take in all these things all the time, all of these subtleties and this information and details, which is also helpful to us. But in the moment when we're taking in a lot, it can be overwhelming. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, we have to understand how we work differently than other people, because I don't know about anyone else, but I grew up getting very overwhelmed in other situations where other people didn't. So busy school events, going to big parties, going to clubs, and I felt I couldn't explain it, but it just felt so stressful and so overwhelming. Or going on trips with people, and I would be so exhausted so early. And when everyone else doesn't experience that, it can feel kind of isolating, because it's like you're so different than everyone else and you just feel like there's something wrong with you. But when I understood that this is just how my brain works, well, then I'm like, well, okay, that's how my brain works. There are benefits to it and there's reasons for it. So how can I work around that to still enjoy these experiences? And so that's why I think it's important, because once we have the awareness and the understanding, it's like, oh, well, there isn't something wrong with me. I'm just different. And so I'm going to approach these situations different. So a good example is during busy times of the year, like Christmas, or when I know things are busy at work, or I have a lot planned within 2 weeks, like a lot of appointments, well then I'm not going to book things on the weekend so that I can just relax and take time for myself. So that's one way, is like when you know that there are going to be busy times, set aside chunks of time for self-care, for not doing too much, just to allow yourself that time to just relax and not be in the stimulus. If you're going on a trip and you have a busy day, maybe the next day make it not as busy and not as formed, or do half a day of busy stuff and half a day of not. You have to figure out how much downtime you need after how much activity and how much you can handle. And that can be built up over time, but you have to figure out what's going to work for you, because everybody's different. Having self-care tools in place for busy events and knowing limits. So for me, knowing that, I like to drive to an event so that I know that I can leave when I'm ready and that I'm not relying on someone else to leave, unless that person is in agreement that we can leave at any time. Or planning rest time before going to a big event, that kind of thing. Maybe having my earphones so I could go listen to a meditation, or knowing where there's a space where I can go outside and just spend some quiet time if I need to kind of gather myself. And then daily self-care practices that help, are more white space, quiet time. So meditation is huge for me. I notice that when I meditate 1 to 2 times a day regularly, it really helps decrease the overwhelm and the noise in general. Going to bed early and getting a good night's sleep has been huge as well. Everybody's different, so finding what works for you. Quiet time in nature, I really love as well. Calm home environment, I found that's, or at least a space in the home that's more quiet and your space to just kind of, just to be more quiet and surrounded by things that help you relax, whether that's essential oils or candles or your favorite books, your favorite music, water sounds. Everybody's different. So that's kind of what I found and what's helped for me. And yeah, I hope that kind of gives an idea and kind of a look into why highly sensitive people, reach that overwhelm, and kind of how you can kind of approach some tips to just kind of approach that. I appreciate and thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to like, comment, and share it with someone you think might enjoy it. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about today's episode. If you have any questions or comments, share them below or send me a private message. I'd love to hear from you. And specifically about overwhelm, I have created a short meditation specifically for overwhelm and stress, and it's under 10 minutes, and you can get this free download. If this is Facebook or YouTube, you'll be able to get the link right underneath in the details, and for Instagram, just click on the link in my bio and you'll be able to access this. Oh, I'm glad it was so helpful. Yes, it was something that was coming up for me today that I felt was important, because figuring out the why for myself for a lot of this stuff is, I find, key to being able to then figure out how to navigate all of this stuff. And that's what's helped me on my journey. So I wanted to share that. So yes, if you're interested in the meditation, please download it. And yeah, okay. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the evening, and good night.